We saw your film yesterday, Thithi, and we liked it a lot. So today we would like to talk with you about your film, the writing process, and other things about the film. So could you begin with telling us how did you embark upon this idea? What was it that inspired you to make this film? And any other insights you would like to give about how did you create this idea, or how did you hit upon the idea of making this film?
Sure. So the seed of the film was the village where we shot it. So it started with the place, which I guess is a bit unorthodox because usually a film probably would start with an idea or a story or something like that. But this time it started with this location. This location was special because the co-writer, it's his hometown. He was born and brought up there.
Okay.
And I've known him since I was in 6th grade, so 15 years. Grew up together, knew each other inside out. So when I went to finally visit his village, I had already sort of decided I wanted to attempt to be a filmmaker. And we had done some short films and kind of was searching for a place to start creating and building a larger story. This was quite long ago. This was about 5 years ago, maybe more. So at that point, I fell in love with the area, the people, and sort of the special relationship, of course, that he had since it was his hometown. So I got to see, the truth of the place. Not like somebody just going somewhere as a visitor, but I got to see the truth of the place. And I was fascinated by that. I was always fascinated by authenticity in cinema, especially in India. As soon as I wanted to be a filmmaker, with that captured like non-professional actors on film. So this was a place where I thought this could be attempted. So the starting seed was the place. Then I went to film school, came back, and we started building the project.
So how did the writing evolve? Like as you said, you hit upon an idea, but as you went, was there a definite script you had in mind, or were you improvising, or how did it happen?
Yeah, so interestingly, like after we chose the place, we kept the story open for a very long time. So this was like 5 years ago. Then, through film school and everything, we were quite sure that we wanted it to arise spontaneously from our experiences there. And we wanted all the sort of core ideas, concepts, stories, characters to arise from our, interaction with the place. So the starting of building the actual story and narrative was this brainstorming process, which lasted maybe 3 months, where we went, stayed, integrated, and there was no agenda, and it was a really magical period in the process because it was like this blank slate. We could have done anything we wanted with like this putty, which was this really wonderful sort of world. So in that process, we did we were searching for interesting characters, we were searching for interesting locations, we were searching for anything that was captivating, and we were sort of just documenting, putting it together, and in that process we ended up finding 3 individuals. So I was always keen on making my first film with 3 generations. I always wanted to have all like different age groups represented. I was also keen on making something in the micro, like a short period of time. Maybe because I was a bit young at the time and I hadn't actually seen long projections in my life. So I was far more interested in creativity in the micro. So this is what I went. This was the background with which I went there. And then we found 3 characters of 3 different generations that were extremely sort of intriguing. And the reason actually we were able to do this creative process really truthfully is because I was with Ire Gada, who's of course, the writer, who wrote with me, the casting director,
right.
And so much more, So in that process, we found the 3 generations of sons. So that's Gadappa's character, Tamanna's character, and Avi's character. There are interesting stories behind each one of them, but we found them, and then through an understanding of them, we started to build a larger narrative, making them 3 generations of the same family. Right. And of course, the Don, the patriarch Century Gada, who
is the star of the
who is the star in so many ways. You know?
Okay. So could you talk about the shooting and how you went about it? Like, after finalizing the location, what kind of issues did you face, or what challenges you faced? Say, talk about maybe about the permissions or getting those people under one particular place, or getting them to act, or any other interesting incidents which you would like to share with regards to your experience of shooting the entire film.
The shooting of Thithi was so insane in so many ways that I could talk all day about especially little incidences. It was incredibly challenging, incredibly hectic, incredibly dynamic in terms of like the sort of like things would change all the time. Our control level was nowhere near what it would be in a professional set, but we accepted that really early on, and all we knew is what we wanted to achieve. How we achieved it didn't really matter.
Okay.
In the sense that the finishing point was the key, and the process we would figure out. Until we reached it, we wouldn't stop. So we wrote after this brainstorming process, and the writing process was incredibly, actually, easy and quick. And that's probably because Gada's from there, and it's so deeply, that culture is so deeply entrenched in him, and also like both our minds were so complementary that we lifted each other up perfectly well. Like so if I was involved a little bit more in the macro construction of the film, he would fill in the micro like so spontaneously. So great writing collaboration.
Okay.
Then we had casting for a long time. That took a long period. And then once the shoot began, it had its own sort of evolution. Like it was everyone's first film. The average age on set was 26. And we were all kind of just fearless, new. And I believed in the talent of my crew, and I knew that if everyone kind of did their best, that everyone had the potential to make something, world class technically, and like a film that stands on its own in terms of all the various departments, etc. Shoot was crazy.
So now talking about the characters, like as I said earlier, this film has like some of the most interesting characters we have seen in recent times, like Century Gowda. He's there for a very short time, but he's got some very, I would say, very unique and very funny lines, and he stays in your mind even like after the film has ended. And then there is of course his son, who's again a very interesting character.
Right.
Then you have some other characters like the lady from whom the son borrows money, and she's shown as a very and she's shown as a very mean character.
Right.
And so you could maybe tell us about whom did you base these characters? Because as I said, nowhere does it seem like they are far-fetched. They are far away from reality. They seem very rooted, and some these characters could be someone or some people whom we might have encountered, or we might see if we go to some of those towns or villages.
Right.
So could you just talk about how did you create those characters, and maybe
Sure. So
inspirations?
a lot of the characters were based on their. A lot of each character was based on their personality in real life.
Okay.
And that was one of the key sort of elements in which we could actually work with them and get sort of honest performances from them. So Century Gowda in real life, he's so cool, like that man who acts as Century Gowda, also an incredibly talented actor. He's 97.
Wow.
He's 101 in the film. In real life, he's 97. He used to free climb coconut trees till he was 95.
Wow.
And we actually had a scene where he didn't have his t-shirt on, and we couldn't, where they were bathing the body, we couldn't use it because he was too muscular. So he's like, you find these gems, and that's what the 8-month casting process was, is to find these gems. And a lot of the actors, had some relation to what they have experienced in their real life. Like even the father character Tamanna, he has some property thing going on in his real life.
Right.
Gadappa is an incredibly beautiful human being in real life. Abhi is a reckless sort of, teenager in real life.
Yeah.
So that the source was intact in their personalities. Then our job was to create a world, a cinematic world, and use these personalities to fit and build a larger narrative structure. So there was sort of a lot of intentional sort of filmmaking in crafting the essence of these characters. And another thing is, since there are so many characters, we had to find people who are particular, who are interested. Because if we had like 100 characters, you know, and each one, many of them have one scene or two scenes, and they have to come back and things crisscross. So it was very important to find people who were memorable, and to also do our best in the script to have impact with each one of them. You know, give them a build up, and you know, position them in a way that they're memorable.
Now, I mean, talking again about the casting. So, most of them are non-actors, right?
Pretty much all of them.
Yeah, but after seeing the film, nowhere does it seem like they are non-actors. I mean, their performances are so good. So, could you talk about how you got them to act in the film, how you got them cast, and how did you work on their performances, and how easy or difficult was it to direct them for the camera?
So it was extremely difficult. We also set a very sort of high quality standard that we wanted each sort of scene or like each take needed to have a certain level of acting before we moved on. It was, and the biggest challenge of the film was to get the performances the way they were. And I also knew as I started the film that I wanted the performance to take sort of a front seat in our sort of priority list in shoot. You know, there are films that probably have certain aspects of the film you can prioritize when you're shooting. What do you want to get right, you know, as the highest priority. And we always, you know, Gauda and I always knew that this was a character-driven film in the sense that the people were the soul of it, and we had to do our best to bring that out. So, having said that, yeah, so with each actor, we had to have a very, very specific strategy. And when it comes to actors who are trained to take direction in a certain way, these are people who are just themselves, and they have their own psychology, their own background, their own talent. Now, when we were casting, we were searching for that talent. And when we were casting, we knew that, okay, this person has this talent, and this talent has to be brought out probably in this way. And then in set, we had to read their psychology moment to moment, you know. And so it was a very specific thing of reading their psychology. And I would do it in a certain way, and, you know, Gauda was there as well, who would do it in a certain way. And we were able to communicate to them on a personal level, you know, to move their psychology in a certain way. So if you start with the first take that's not so great, we had to somehow find a way to make the last take work.
Okay.
So each of those actors had a different challenge. Some of them were needed several takes with freedom to do what they want. Others needed particular directions. Others needed to, you know, be tricked into saying it's a rehearsal and then shooting quietly.
Okay.
You know, so it was very, very character specific.
Okay.
Also, technically, the whole crew, you know, had, like, we were working around the actors were kings on set. Right? We minimalized blocking, so we didn't. It's very difficult for a non-actor to come and stop at the right spot. Otherwise, they're thinking of which spot they have to stop in. You know, they can't catch light. So when the actor moves, the camera moves. We move with them. We follow them. We're in their world. So that was always very strong in the treatment. You know, camera, everything came around them. So these were these little things, and there's so much more. But and this is why the shoot took fairly long. It was, you know, fairly challenging. Some actors were incredibly difficult to work with.
Okay, like.
Okay. Let's leave that a secret.
Okay, cool.
Because like some of them, they've turned out fine, but they were nightmares to work with.
Okay.
Some of them were extremely talented, you know. So we faced all kinds of experiences in the process.
So could you talk about the post-production of the film and how long did it take for you to, like, after the shooting, getting the film in the shape and the way it is being seen today? So how was it? How long did that?
Everything in this film has had a journey.
Okay.
from everything, from the seed to everything. So post had its own journey, and it's been almost a year of post-production. We started, so the edit was quite organic and was working quite well, and then, you know, we had different cuts which we worked with in different ways. One of the things that took a fairly long time was sound, and I'm extremely passionate about sound, and, you know, probably Thithi's sound is very intrinsic, subtle, and like technically created, but like sound for me is like the soul of cinema. Okay. And getting sound right was key. So building the soundscape, even though it was subtle, even though it wasn't like creatively dense, you know, and of course I was working with Nathan Lucas, who's an incredible sound designer, he was on location with us as well. Building the soundscape was extremely challenging. Everything is recorded. There's nothing from a library because the world is so particular. So everything had to be recorded from that world, and like very subtle things like crowd dubs. Like to dub a crowd, a very particular crowd that speaks a very particular language. All these things were extremely challenging, and it's not like you take a dub like of a single character and then just put like 3 together. No, you got to get a murmur, and you have to get different levels of murmurs. You have to get murmurs with different textures and different content, and so all this was extreme. It was like labor of love. It's like little things. Like we constructed. Thithi was constructed. Edit. It's also a very edit-driven film. Even the edit was constructed piece by piece. It had, it's a subtle. It's very, what's the word? The balance in the edit is very rhythmic, and it has to be like you remove something somewhere else something goes out of balance. Maybe like it's like butterfly effect. It's one of those kind of, constructions. So the whole of post was like that. It was micro-constructing, moving slowly. It needed a lot of patience, a lot of, and it's gone through its own journey, and I'm very happy with how it turned out.
So now, talking about your journey, so you started your filmmaking journey by making several short films.
Right.
After which you studied filmmaking at Prague.
Right.
Okay. So could you talk about how did your journey of making short films, or
right.
what did your experience of making short films help you? What insight did it give you, and how did it help you to make feature films?
Right.
And could you also talk about of late in India, we have been seeing, especially in southern part of India,
right.
there has been an upswing of filmmakers who have been making a transition from making short films to feature films.
Right.
So could you just talk about how did this experience help you, and what way did you help it? Did you use your experience of making short films while working on Thithi?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like the short medium is, I think, for any filmmaker, is the first medium that you need to try and get a deeper understanding of, or you should try to raise your short filmmaking skills before you attempt a feature, and that's for several reasons. It can be done for much smaller budgets if your idea is manageable, and it is the place to practice and learn your craft. It's not that the short medium and the feature medium are the same. The short medium has a different soul, the feature medium has a different soul, but the essence is the same because the medium is the same. Like the micro, and the more short films you make, what I did very deliberately was in each short film I focused on a different aspect of filmmaking. This is before I went to film school. So in the first one I was just focusing on constructing a sequence of images that worked together, and told a story. So there were no faces in that film. It was only hands and body. So I wasn't dealing with actors. In the second one I planted my camera, didn't touch it, and I was trying to deal with actors. In the third one we were trying to deal with a certain execution of timing, and the fourth one something else. So there, you kind of, because cinema brings together all these things when you're working on a larger project, and everything has to come to balance. And then I'd actually made about 7 short films before. My 8th one was this short film called Ika, which is Feather in Telugu, and that's where I tried to bring in all these things together, and then that sort of practice held me in great stead, and I was getting more and more comfortable with different micro aspects of the medium. Then I went to Prague to get technical, because all my shots had happened on a DSLR, with a zero budget and micro crew, and mostly people I knew acting, etc. So I went to Prague to get technical because I wanted to attempt a feature that was quite ambitious in some ways, and I knew that I wanted to, and I just wanted to be able to trust myself more technically. With a larger script. So
you started your journey by making short films, and later on you studied filmmaking at Prague. So how did your how did the experience of making short film help you while making your feature film, and were there any particular insights or experiences which you carried from your short films to the feature, and how did it help you? And because currently there has also been a upsurge of filmmakers who have been making the transition from making short to feature film. Could you also talk about how does the short film format help a filmmaker while making a feature film, or why one should attempt that? Those who are learning the ropes of filmmaking.
So, I mean, short films are should be and can be a process of self-education, but also in a period of time where it's very easy to make a short film. It's very accessible. You can do it on your cell phone. You can edit it on a basic laptop and you have a short film. So to really understand cinema as a medium, and cinema is quite a complex medium in the sense that it has several aspects. There's image, there's sound, there's edit, and they all, it's kind of an ecosystem medium. Everything has to balance and come together. So when you're working on shots, you can do this without having much at stake, right? Because you can't do it for nothing now. The world has come to, technology is allowing that, and I'm very grateful to be in this generation of filmmakers. I was lucky to have a DSLR. I had one of the first 70s around in South, and I used that to make 8 short films before I went to Prague. And a lot of those focused on a different aspect of filmmaking, which I wanted to sort of learn in more depth. And then the 8th short film I made brought together whatever I'd learned from all the first 7, and that became like my first finished film, and that's called Ika Feather. And that did quite well. That was very encouraging. It helped me know that if I stay true to my art, I had like a little bit more self-confidence in my own craft. But then of course, I'd been making this alone with 70s, and this can make you understand the craft. But when you get on a feature film set, there's a lot. It's like an organization that's working at the same time, and it's far more technical, and it has to be, because it's usually larger, and time is often more challenging and has to be managed. So I wanted to be more technical, so I was more comfortable dealing with the larger project. So Prague really did that to me. It took me into a wide-eyed filmmaker with ideas, into a rooted filmmaker who was much more confident about technical ability. Of course, I learned immensely in the start of the shoot of Thithi as well, and I'm still learning every step of the way, trying to just improve the craft, become better. But that's what Prague did. It made me more technical, and then I was sort of much more confident in dealing with an ambitious project. So then when I came back from Prague, Gauda and I were quite fearless, and we just started writing a script that was quite massive, even more massive than actually the film you see now. The screenplay was massive. There are characters and stuff that are not there in the final film, but it was absolutely, almost idiotically ambitious. And then once but that fearlessness, that non-compromise, and I was very lucky to also build a crew that was able to back this kind of sort of like an over-ambitious first project. And people were and I was able to get my closest friend from Holland, who I made all my films in Prague with, who is, the reason the film is the way it is largely because of him. He was the DOP and so much more as well. And the editor of the film I also met at Prague, so that's another thing Prague did for me. He was an American editor, extremely talented. When I contacted him, he was 21. When I contacted him to start it, and of course he's American, doesn't know Kannada, but he's a drummer in a garage punk band, and he has a rhythm. He has like incredible rhythm, like this inherent sense of rhythm. So I'm digressing, but these were all things that sort of evolved into this process, and then with this crew we were there in the village and we were ready and we just did our best, and somewhere Thithi happened.
So lastly, now talking about which are the filmmakers, or what have been your inspirations, and what is the road ahead after Thithi? What is it they're planning? Maybe if you'd like to tell us.
Sure. No, so inspiration-wise, I've seen, like in my process of like sort of learning cinema, I watched so much world cinema from everywhere that I could. I thought Iranian cinema was very honest, so I like the honesty of Iranian cinema. I thought Eastern European cinema had a sort of life and a vibe, like a inner sort of energy and a touch of magic that I really especially liked. I like the organicness of cinema from the East, from Japan, even some of the animations. So it's more like cinema from different regions of the world rather than filmmakers that were really, and I like to try and take little bits from wherever I could. So and plus, I mean, even from the West, as in like they do something else brilliantly, and these does something else brilliantly. So try to take a little bit of that and personalize it, and try and be as unique using that.
Talking about Thithi, so what is the road ahead for the film, and what are the other projects, or what is it that you're planned? Like, what are the other projects that are there in the pipeline? Could you just tell us something about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Thithi's journey has been wonderful so far, as in every step of the way. It's sort of been validated in different ways, which has been wonderful. Film Bazaar first, then Locarno, and now the responses at Mami has been very nice. These are all very different sort of audiences who have seen it, and each audience has responded warmly, and that hopefully tells me that there is a sort of universality, and that hopefully this film can travel internationally, and of course hopefully can work in India, in Karnataka as well. And I'm just so excited about sharing this film in Karnataka. It's something we just haven't done yet, because the journey is taking us there. I mean, we've been working on the film till very, very recently. So very excited to take it back to Karnataka, and very excited about the possibility of a theatrical, which is looking positive. So let's hope that this indie film actually gets into theaters, and that people enjoy it. And as far as the road ahead, there are a lot of things I'm sort of interested in. I haven't started anything because I'm completely committed to seeing Thithi through, and it's already quite a job. But I'm very keen on like in Thithi, one of the things I wanted to do was build a particular world that is in no other film, or that particularly built by the minds who built it, and hence is sort of original in itself. I'd like to treat each film like this. So each film needs to be an original world that's unlike any other world, and using, obviously there will be a thread that ties it together, because there's inner creativity coming out in certain philosophical, spiritual concepts that I'd like to put in my work somehow, subliminally. So that will always stay. But each film will be a particular world, and so the next film may be completely different. And I'm quite keen on doing different kinds of work. So a director like Ang Lee, has made so many, there's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and there's Brokeback Mountain, by the same director.
And also Life of Pi.
Life of Pi, which was absolutely stunning. So, I'm interested in doing that. I'm interested in building particular worlds of various natures. So let's see. I'm going to see what pulls me next. I'm excited.